Welcome to the AI Leader Series. Rob Meaney has spent 25 years learning that testing was never the problem. Quality was, and culture was underpinning that. In this episode, he argues that most teams are pointing AI at the wrong end of their systems. Before generating features, use it to see production clearly, close your coverage gaps, and lift the quality of the codebase that AI is about to amplify. Plus, why the team is the only useful unit of measurement. What CFOs are now asking about the token bill and the signal that almost nobody's talking about.
One. Hey, and I don't care about what they say. Come from a place where we pray for better days. Get it how you live, yeah, that's the only way.
Very much, Sean. Delighted to be here.
Where are you dialing in from?
I'm dialing in from Fennells Bay in Crosshaven in County Cork.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. We've got so like the audience of the podcast, there's about 50% of people from America tune in, right? So they'll probably be familiar with like Kinsale and the Old Head.
Yeah.
But not many people are familiar with Crosshaven, right? And that's as beautiful, if not more beautiful than Kinsale.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but yeah, we've the oldest yacht club in the world.
Really?
Yeah. So the RCYC down there is the oldest yacht club in the world. So about 2 weeks ago we had Cork Week where we've got like hundreds of people come over to race. So I was having my breakfast looking out at like all these boats racing in the morning. It was pretty amazing. But yeah, it's not quite Kinsale, but it's a little fishing village just outside of Cork City, and yeah, I'm lucky enough to live down by the sea here. Can't swim though, so can't take advantage of the water too much. And I haven't started sailing yet. All my neighbors sail, but no, I don't sail either, so it's wasted on me.
Yeah, the yacht is coming. The yacht is coming. Rob, I was really excited to get you on, right? Because up until this date, we've had, VPs of engineering who've kind of gone up the ladder via engineering. We've had CTOs, we've had founders, we've had chief architects. But I think you're rare in terms of like you've graduated through the hard knocks of quality assurance and now you're managing engineering teams, right? And I think when we look at the transition of QA and engineering over the last like 3 years with AI, I was really excited to have you on. And also you've gone through the journey 3 times with like acquisitions and stuff like that. So you've seen it all the way from like small teams all the way like to global teams like ABC Fitness and 30K gyms, right? So I guess I'm going to start with the first question is, right, like between like TrustDev, Populo, ABC, and now Phorest, like what are the patterns that you're seeing that like have always been there with engineering, and what patterns are you seeing changing with AI?
Yeah, so the interesting thing for me is you talked about my background, and I started out in testing, and I realized quickly that testing wasn't the problem, quality was the problem, and then I realized, quality isn't the problem, culture and ways of working are the problem, and that's essentially how my career evolved. And as it evolved over the 20 or 25 years, I've kind of developed a set of principles, engineering principles, and those principles hold more true now than I think they ever did. And like some of the key ideas I talk to teams about, so a lot of the work I do is around transforming ways of working and culture and all this good stuff. And what I'm seeing is those principles becoming more and more important. So, for example, clearly understanding the problem you're solving, right? Many places I've worked, they jump to solution, and one of my key things is about building empowered teams that own solutionizing from first understanding the problem all the way through to slicing it down super small, getting into customers' hands early and safely, and then learning quickly and iterating based on what we learn, right? So when you think about AI and the changes with AI now, again, the same idea is like 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, I was talking about spec-driven development. I was talking about BDD, I was talking about TDD, ATDD, all these techniques around let's figure out the problem to solve, let's specify the behavior before we actually do the coding, all this good stuff. Guess what? With AI now, these same critical ideas are so important. It's like, okay, let's understand the problem, let's identify the metrics that allow us to understand, are we solving that problem well for our customers. Let's slice it down into something small and valuable that we believe, again, will solve the problem. And then we get into the specifications, like, okay, how, like in terms of BDD or whatever you want to call it, how, what's the desired behavior from the user's perspective, specifying that together using techniques. We've got nice techniques like Three Amigos, where you come together to get, and now I'm using AI to do Three Amigo sessions, which is really cool. For those that don't know what a Three Amigo session is you get a tester, developer, designer, or PM together when you're about to work on the user story, and you come together and you ideate about the acceptance criteria. Usually the tester is talking about, oh, what would happen if this goes wrong, and the designer is saying, oh, it should look like this, and the developer saying, oh, well, they come together, they ideate, they specify the acceptance criteria together, they then specify the acceptance tests, and then we get into a small incremental deliverable that is a user story, and we deliver that, and then we have the acceptance test to test it, and then those roll up into a slice, and we get that into the customer's hands quickly, and we gather the data, and we see the usage, and then we look at that the metrics again, the success metrics that we've defined to understand, are we actually having a positive impact on our users' world, not are we just delivering more features. With AI, this stuff is so much more important, right? Because it's all about one, understanding the problem, gathering the context, deeply understanding it, then putting the success metrics around it. If you can provide success metrics to the AI, it has a forcing function that it can use to genuinely, achieve the things we want to achieve, not just shovel more stuff out the door, right? So we have our success metrics. Again, at every step then, and slicing it down in Three Amigos, we can partner with AI to do this really well, right? One of the cool things that I did in the last place I worked actually was we were using a tool called Interpret, which is an aggregator of all the customer touch points. It takes data from every system that our customers interact with, and it puts it in a single place. And then you can go in and you can interrogate it. And what I did was I had tens of thousands of data points from our customers, and I asked it to create a set of personas that are representative of all their customers and their motivations and all this kind of good stuff. And then I use that to build to build context files that would then allow me to actually kind of almost critique potential features for our customer base using these personas, which was just like mind blowing. It's like, oh, this person that typically this person is very very time poor, they're rushing, they're going to make mistakes, blah, blah. And it's like, then I could interact with that, and it brings those perspectives to me before we get anything even near customers, which I thought was like a bit mind blowing. And similarly, you can leverage that same kind of thought process for testing. Is like, oh, when we're testing a product, are we considering all these different user types with all these different needs and all these different contexts, and building up that context in AI, and using that to drive better kind of specification, better testing, better development, and then having those loops all the way through with the AI to say, oh, did the success metrics move? Is the code working to specification? All that good stuff, all those loops throughout, and gives us a really, really powerful way of solving problems. So the interesting thing that I see as well is people are saying, oh, now people are saying we need to focus on building the right things, because we were always focused on building the things right before. But like, it's a really weird way of looking at it, because it was so costly to build software before, and people were just focused on building the thing right. And now they're saying, oh, we should be focused on building the right thing, right? But that was an even more costly mistake before. So I'm not. Again, the fundamental things I fixate on are we solving the right people, our problems for the right people first and foremost. Start with the problem, work towards solution, and the great thing about AI now is that we can make those learning cycles super short, and we can learn and adapt more quickly than ever.
There's a lot in there I want to pick at, but like the first thing is like, BDD, TDD, spec-driven development, right? It seems like it's having its golden moment, because, I remember 10 years ago, I was at a presentation in like a symposium in London, and I can't remember the guy. For the life of me, I'm trying to remember him. And he presented like TDD and like spec driven development, and it was like the VPs in the room were kind of laughing him and like making a mockery, because he was like, we don't have time for this. Like, our engineers won't have time for this. Like, how do we even get this going, like mobilizing it? And they were looking at it like from a very short-term investment type of thing, where it's like, I need to prove ROI within a year, and you're telling me that I need to transform something that's going to take me 2 years, but now in the longer run you can see it. I'll try to link that in the notes, right? That presentation, that guy. So, like, do you think that TDD, BDD, and spec-driven development is having its golden moment, and the great unlock is that AI is able to like move left or shift left?
I think one of the mistakes I'm seeing with AI, like this, it's more than just spec-driven development. The spec-driven development is super, super, super important now. What's more important is the scoping of the problem and scoping it down super small, because I'm seeing a parallel between the cognitive load of humans and the cognitive load in AI, right? If you give an AI a vague task to complete, it will do a pretty crap job. It's very, very similar with humans. When I try and, like, the work I've been doing for 10, 15, 20 years on improving quality and all that stuff is primarily driven by how can we slice this thing down into the smallest, most valuable thing that we can get into a user's hand. The reason that's so powerful is because when you make something super small and super simple, the cognitive load associated with that, the size of the PR, the amount of testing, all that stuff is much, much, much reduced. That means you can reason about the systems, right? Guess what? It's the very same with AI. So when you're building with AI, I think scoping things down, slicing it down into the smallest, most valuable thing, and then again going through that spec-driven stuff is really important to say, okay, so what does success look like? What are the key scenarios or examples from the user's perspective of what success looks like, and what are the anti-patterns too, because you have to specify both the positive behavior and the negative behavior. So there's a lot of people talk about the spec-driven thing. For me, the more important thing is the scoping and slicing of the work down into small chunks, so that, as I said, you can get super small, super specific, and deliver something that solves a super specific problem and validate that quickly with users. And then another one of my principles I talked about is we invest based on evidence. So we get something small and simple into customers' hands, and then we layer on the complexity as we get feedback from reality or customers that complexity is necessary. Now, what I see in lots of places is here's a vague here's a vague thing, build it all. So you've got a mountain of complexity that you haven't validated. Start with the smallest, simplest thing that you think is the clearest signal of solving the problem. Get it into a small number of customers' hands, and then you layer in the complexity based on demand, not based on what you assume will be necessary, but what's actually necessary for the people really using your software in the real world.
Do you know what that reminds me of? Two stories, or two recent conversations I had. One was with Dave, who was VP of Engineering at Astronomer, and he went in and he said, "Look, I want an observability tool that just ingests my logs. I don't want fancy AI wizardry around that. I just want you to do a job that I want you to like that I want." And it also reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend who's in AppSec, and their team just built out loads of product, like loads of unnecessary product, and he has then tried to like figure out, how do I go sell that? And it's like customers don't want more product; they want you to solve the problem they have, right?
Yeah. So there's a great book by Cathy Sierra called Badass Users, and she talks about people do not want to use your software.
Yeah.
People like they just don't, right? People want the results your software gives them in their context.
Yeah.
If they could avoid using your software, they would.
They would.
Okay.
Yeah.
They want the results in their context, and the key idea of this book is that we want our software to make our customers, our users, more successful than yours, right? In their context of what they're doing, and that's the key thing. Now, there's a lovely quote from a guy called John Gall, and I think he was a professor of cybernetics or something like that, and he says, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I don't know it off by heart. He says that any complex system that works started out as a simple system that first worked. Starting with complex systems never works.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so, I see it so much. And the reason I know the quote is because I've seen it for years, is like people trying to build complex systems from the start will fail.
Yeah.
Start with the simplest thing you can and layer on complexity as it's demanded from the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're setting yourself up for failure. And there's a huge cost with complexity as well, right? You know, if you have complex code, you have to maintain, you have to extend, you have to do all that stuff. I'm a big believer in Pareto's principle, or the 80-20 rule. So whenever I'm trying to solve a problem, I try and identify what the 20% of the solution that it gives us 80% of the results. So if we can get that 20% of the solution into the customer's hands quickly and early, and validate that yes, it actually solves the problem, then we can layer on the necessary complexity. But often you'll find that you actually don't need to, because it does the vast majority of what they need.
Yeah.
Well,
I think like there's a difference between mature enterprises and, let's say, startups, right? Like startups are being forced, I'm not forced, but like maybe they're being pressurized that, like, as you said, like building is cheap right now, even if you build the wrong thing. So like they're being subsidized, or their building has been subsidized. So it's like overbuild and you can cut down the building then when you want to, while mature enterprises are still on the period of like, they're a bit more thoughtful on like how much more product they want to introduce, because it's more risk. It's a bigger machine. It's a bigger boat.
Yeah. Like there's different models there. One is about incremental improvement, and the other is about product market fit.
Yeah.
Right. There are two different problems you're solving. With a startup, you're optimizing for opportunity cost, meaning that you're trying lots and lots of different things to see what, and the quicker and cheaper that you can try out different ideas, the quicker you can get to something that wins, right? So it's all optimized for opportunity cost. There is very little downside, because you don't have a lot of existing customers that are that are going to complain if some things go wrong. With enterprise, it's quite different, right? Often you're looking for incremental improvements. There's huge downside risk associated with breaking your existing systems, because people rely on it. So you want to make small, safe, incremental changes that don't rock the boat too much. And that's often why many of the big enterprises are actually fail in the end, is because they focus on these tiny incremental changes, while those startups are disrupting. They're going big. They're going, like they're just rethinking the whole problem space and going with a whole different solution, while the enterprise is like, oh, we can make you 1% better this way.
Switching gears a small bit, right? So we've kind of talked about the upfront investment, right? We've talked about like the code is cheap, but you can't ignore the stats either, right? That like AI-driven development is expensive in a way that it actually is generating more bugs, right? More issues, right? Like I was reading stats before this, like from GitHub's state of AI, it was like 1.7x more issues compared to human-generated bugs. I saw a report from a security perspective, and it's like double the amount of security issues. Now, maybe that's just like because there's 10x more code, right? And maybe it's like there's a correlation there. But like, how would you, as if you put your QA hat on, right, or your testability hat on, like how would you bake this in, like to reduce issues? Because like, okay, issues are there, right? Like, you're never going to have zero issues, right? But like, what would you, how would you anchor that, and how would you come and solve for that?
Yeah, so everyone's really excited about using AI to generate code.
Yeah.
Right. Generate more features, generate more code. Now, the reading I've done suggests that the quality of the code base where your AI, where so your existing code base, if you leave AI loose on an existing code base that is poor quality, the output is poor quality. If you have good quality, you get a good quality output. That's based on research done by the guys in Code Scene, Adam Thornhill and the guys. And my approach to this is, I think everyone is fixated on using AI to generate more features and do more stuff. For me, I would like to see more people taking the approach of how can we leverage AI to firstly improve our observability and instrumentation, so we understand our production systems as they are first, Okay, so understand current reality. So AI, can you add observability and the necessary instrumentation so that we really understand how healthy our systems are? Next, I would use AI to look at our pipelines and our test coverage and say, okay, so like we have this whole area, we've got really poor test coverage and all this stuff. We need to add good test coverage so that we can explicitly outline what our desired behavior is, right? So with the observability, we understand current reality. With this new test coverage, we explicitly outline what the desired behavior of our software is, and then we can, knowing current reality in production and knowing that we have a safe way of making changes, we can start to make changes. And if we break something, the tests are there. And if the tests don't catch them, we have the observability in place to catch the issues then. So for me, there's a nice quote from Ken Beck that he talks about, make the make the change easy, then make the easy change.
Yeah.
And there's a thing in brackets, making it easy may not be easy.
Yeah.
But for me, I paraphrase that one, which is make the change safe, then make the safe change, right? So why not leverage AI to first making changes safe, and then you can leverage AI in a safe way.
Yeah. There, what Werner Vogel's CTO of Amazon said last year, we have a verification debt, which is what you're talking about, right? Like we first need to have a real accurate picture of reality, which is your production systems, your observability, and then where are the blind spots? Where's our gap in our knowledge? Where's our gap in our testing? Where's our gap in historical issues? I wonder though, like if you were to sell this to a CTO and say, hey, we're going to take 3 months to do this or 6 months to do this. We don't want to build any features on top of this. Like,
but why is it taking 3 or 6 months? Like the whole thing with AI, like this is what I'm saying. AI can accelerate this. Like AI can like adding observability and instrumentation via AI should be something that's relatively low cost and quick. Adding additional test coverage, again, doing an audit you can use AI to identify where your gaps are, and then you can use AI to actually add the tests as necessary or add the observability as necessary. Like this should not be a huge investment. Secondly, you can do it in a targeted way. You can pick a small part of your system and say, we're going to go through this. We're going to add the observability. We're going to add the test coverage, and then we're going to use AI. And you could do somewhere else. You could take the other approaches, just use the AI willy-nilly, right? And compare. I think even I mentioned code scene earlier. One of the things that I started doing when I was working in ABC Fitness was I introduced code scene to actually give us independent subjective feedback on the code quality, so that we could then use AI to get our code quality to a place we wanted with every single PR. So if you can imagine, CodeScene has a scoring mechanism they use for analyzing your code base and assessing code quality. There's 25 different factors, all this good stuff. Get that, you take that, you get AI to incrementally improve it, and until it gets to say a 9.8 out of 10. The reason that's important, like with their data as well, they could show that code bases with a code quality below this have a 22 times more likelihood to have bugs and all this kind of good stuff. All the data was there as well. So you can introduce these these mechanisms to understand, where you currently are and what return you're hopefully going to get on your investment. And you can do it at a small scale or a large scale. Like when you talk about 3 to 6 months, I wouldn't be, that's too long. You can talking to slicing and scoping things down. It's the very same with these experiments with AI. We can slice them down and scope them down to a small area of the code base or a simple change and just see how it works and see what doesn't work.
I know 2 companies, right? Well-known companies actually have a big presence in Ireland that have rebuilt their product, and like they're one of them is a scale up like Series E. One of them is like a mature organization. Both of them are rebuilding their product from the ground up because they want to make it AI. Like they want to set the foundations for AI first, because they're like looking at like a 10-year cycle, and they're like, and when I talk to the CTO or the head of engineering, he's like, we can't get good engineers. Right, like we can't get really good engineers that meet our quality bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'd rather like have a smaller team of engineers, mobs and stuff like that, but like the foundation is built on AI, and we need, like, for that investment to come true, we're rebuilding our products from the ground up.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the AI Leaders series. Just a quick word from our sponsors, Kernel. Coding agents write faster than teams can review it. It's becoming the ceiling in how fast you ship. While PR-based code review tools can help, they only read the diff, they don't run it. So you get predictions instead of proof, and a lot of time wasted in forever fix loops. Kernel was built to solve this problem. It's the only local runtime code and security reviewer that runs in your agent session and exercises real paths against your live stack. In one run, Kernel checks for behavior changes, regressions, integration, and security issues, finding the real hard issues before you open a PR. And one run covers 8 times more than SaaS and does it at lightning fast speeds. Kernel is free to try and easy to set up. So stop reviewing agent code at PR time and head to kernel.io.
We're rebuilding our products from the ground up, which I thought was a bold, daring move, right? And one of them is doing 2 billion in revenue. The other one is probably north of 100 million. Yeah, I know. I was like, really? So that's the extreme version of like slicing, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, well, that's the opposite. I would say that's bet the house on it.
Exactly. Yeah,
so like what I would be doing is saying, have you any small product or small part of the product that we can rebuild?
Yeah.
Test that model. So like I wouldn't take the whole product.
They probably did, Rob. They probably did, right? Like they didn't probably. You know, it's like a finger in the air kind of stuff. They probably like did and tested it on it, like a small chunk of it, and see how that performed. And then like superimpose that across the whole.
Yeah. But again, you have to do that incrementally in bits and pieces too. Like there's the reason that slicing and fast feedback cycle, you know, the cycle stuff is all so important is because there's more unknown than there is known. As these people are building out this new solution, the technology is evolving, all the stuff is evolving, things are changing, right? So you need those fast feedback loops so that you can evolve with this changing world.
Yeah.
Like if you just say, well, if we invest in this for the next 2 years and you go away and you do it, then reality is changing all around you. You haven't gotten the feedback to figure out like, oh, should we actually be using a completely different infrastructure or tooling or whatever, you know? And it's a really funny time because nobody has the answers to any of this stuff.
No, that makes it fun as well, though, right?
It's fun, scary, exciting. But it is, and you know, like you're seeing really cool, exciting things, and but then like you're hearing things as well, about people who are doing, you know, business, like specific businesses that are very successful that are saying, oh, we're doing all this with AI, and then you're hearing rumors like, no, they're not. That's all marketing, and they're actually not doing what they're saying they're doing, and that's kind of hard too, because that puts a huge amount of pressure on the smaller businesses around the place, because then the CTO and stuff, like everyone's going to the CTO and saying, oh, this giant well-known company has adopted AI and is doing 1 billion deployments every 15 seconds, and they're blah 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 blah, and they're achieving like, you know, X amount of throughput, like 10x, 50x throughput, and then, you know, the pressure is there for you to start doing the same thing. Whether it's true or not is to be determined, you know. So it's a tricky one. And the biggest challenge I'm seeing is the return on investment stuff. Is like there was a phase there when everyone was just like, just max out your tokens, just use AI, just do. Now we're turning to a place where people are kind of going, there's a cost associated with this, and it's not insignificant. And I'm not sure I can see the measurable outcomes associated with this. And that's where my head's been for quite a while now, is how do we understand the system in terms of, like, it's always been the problem, is like, how do we map the investment in developing software to measurable, meaningful outcomes for the business or for our customers. And it's becoming, again, more important now because people are spending tens of thousands of euro on tokens, and CFOs are beginning to turn around and go, why are we spending so much? What have we gotten from this?
Remember, we had a chat a couple of weeks ago, and you mentioned, I can't remember the guy, and he said that, like, 80% of code is just
Ron,
waste, right?
Ronnie Quavi.
Yeah, Ronnie Quavi, right? It's like, well, it's the same principle with tokens and engineering. Is like, do we just like assume that 80% of it is just going to be burnt?
Yeah. Well, you have to remember as well, there's a learning aspect to this too, right?
Yeah.
So again, if you go back to that principle, invest based on evidence, not based on opinion, like if we like there, and the startup stuff where you're like, there's opportunity cost, it's the same with AI at the moment. People are still figuring out like, how do we use and leverage AI? So there's going to be a lot of things that you try that don't work, and then there's going to be something that you try that does work, and then you need to invest, double down on investing in that, I think.
But
But
do you
yeah.
think, Rob, like my pattern recognition is like your top engineers are singing the praises of AI, right? That then bubbles up to, and they've all the skills, they've like built all the knowledge work around it, right, to make it very efficient for them. That bubbles up into the VP of engineering. The VP of engineering takes that to the CTO. CTO takes it to CFO, right? Like, but it's only like, in my experience, your top engineers only represent 5-10% of your whole engineering organization, and they think and work very differently than the 90% of your developers, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it seems like there's a big gulf in. I read a stat that like your top contributors will do like your top 1 percentile will do like 1,000 commits a month versus your median, which is 50 commits a month, right?
Yeah.
A massive gulf.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. So like, again, one of my things when I'm working places, I focus on the team as the unit of delivery. So I don't actually, it's funny as you say that, it's funny because I'm like, I don't focus on individuals at all. I focus on a team, and I look at a team, and the team's responsibility is to create value, right? Measurable value. And so my perspective on this is, it's a bit like what I was saying earlier. Some things haven't changed. Like, ultimately, it's the responsibility of the team to, I talk about output and outcomes a lot, right? So what a team does is it creates output, code, features, whatever you want to call that, right? But that isn't success. Success are the outcomes that are driven by that, right? So outcomes are measurable, usually financial things, or they could be success metrics for our customers. So if our customers are successful, obviously our business will be more financially successful. So for years, what I've focused on working with teams to do is to identify what are the key sets of metrics that allow us to understand one. So like, there's the first thing around delivery and quality is like, can we quickly and safely get changes into our customers' hands, right? That's kind of DORA metrics and quality stuff. And then we move towards output. What's the smallest unit of learning or delivery? Like, we slice things down, we get them into customers' hands to learn, is this the right problem to solve? And is this the right solution to the problem? The more iterations or the more slices that you can go through, the quicker you learn, the quicker you get to the outcomes you care about, which are business impact and customer success. So from my perspective, rather than focusing on individual productivity or anything like that, I look at teams and I look at metrics in terms of our ability to get changes into production, our ability to learn, and the ability of the team to drive outcomes for the business. And I don't care necessarily about an individual, because any individual in isolation isn't going to drive that success. Because like, who's testing their stuff, who's who's building and deploying their stuff, who's now with AI, maybe they can do this all in isolation, but usually you have a product manager and a designer and a tester and developer. So the team as a unit, for me, is always the unit of assessment. Like, we fail, we succeed, and we fail as a team. We start and we finish as a team, the whole lot, and then putting the measures around that team so that they can understand how they're doing. And if you have those measures in place, guess what? Introducing AI, you can actually see the impact of AI. I can give you an example. In the company I currently work with, we managed to 2x the throughput, PR throughput, in the last 3 months using AI. So yeah, we're doing twice as many PRs now.
And I think you're touching on a really important nuance, right? Like, you've like, there's people driving the narrative, but that's different to like people driving the success, right? So the narrative could be driven by that one engineer that's using AI, right? And that propagates then into conversations. And you go on YouTube and like type in AI engineer, and you have all these senior engineers, right, that like are saying they're doing all this whiz things with AI, but that doesn't propagate to the actual company, right? But as you said, like treating this as a unit of delivery, right, your team, and looking at the overall success, that's the nuance here of the ROI discussion, right?
Exactly, and this is the irony of it is I've been trying to get this kind of data and these kinds of metrics embedded into ways of working and teams for 10 years.
Yeah.
But now I can justify it because everyone's being asked. Like this is I'd come back to the thing I said earlier. Like I always wanted to be able to see this stuff to be able to tie our efforts to the outcomes. For some reason, that wasn't as important in the past. Now everyone's trying to justify their investment in AI. They want to see the metrics. But AI is cheaper at building the software than before. Humans building it before were really expensive, but nobody was asking to justify the investment in humans.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. It was just
It's
the
like,
cost of doing business.
oh yeah, it's just like humans. That's fine.
Yeah.
We'll pay for humans. We have to justify the cost. I'm like, this stuff was more important before because it was more costly. You were ignoring it, and now all of a sudden with AI, everyone wants to see the data and the return on investment.
But like, okay, when we moved to cloud, right, there was a more tangible business case to move into cloud, right? Like there was more reliability. You didn't have to manage servers. You could actually cut costs and having like data admin or admin teams around that, right? And data system teams. And so you could see like from just a basic P&L, lift and shift. Okay, I'm saving this much compound over 10, 20 years, yada, yada, yada. With AI, the CFO is kind of scratching their head and like, we need to hire more engineers. What? It's like,
It is because they're like, oh, we need people to manage AI. Like,
and the sunk cost,
I hired an AI enablement team in my last company, and they were it was a platform enablement team essentially to build out an AI platform that would facilitate all the other teams in the business, software development teams in the business, innovating using AI. So building the reusable components, whether it's to do with observability, testing, whatever it is, they build these reusable components so that any team could then say, oh, we're going to leverage AI to create it, to introduce innovations.
But then, sorry to cut across. Do you think we're over indexing on engineering as an AI application? Like, because we're engineers, right? So we understand the value it can bring to our lives. But for sales teams, marketing teams, the financial teams, like, is there,
This is something. So this is something I was working on the last place, and I'll be working on in the future as well. Is this whole idea of the 4 deployed engineers, right? So in an AI enablement team, too, a part of that team, there is the platform team to support AI innovation in our product development teams. Also, we'll have 4 deployed engineers that go and work with the different functions across the business, and understand their workflows. Understand. I have a little model that I use around this. Is focus, flow, output and outcomes. We need to understand what areas this particular function are focused on. What does the flow of work look like? What output or deliverables they create that we believe then drive the outcomes for the business. And by analyzing that, you can then look at that workflow and say, oh, we're going to increase output and potentially outcomes by either introducing AI to make part of that workflow a bit better, or using AI to actually replace that workflow. So bringing in a 4 deployed engineer to understand the shape of the work and in terms of the workflows, in terms of what they create, in terms of output and the outcomes that they drive for the business. And then having done the analysis, decide, okay, we can use AI to do this thing here to alleviate the bottleneck or constraint, so you can create more output, which drives more outcomes for the business. Or you look at the workflow and go, maybe this could be completely revolutionized, and we could build a tool, or we could buy a tool, or whatever it is to make a huge impact. So that's another area that I'm looking at the moment is like, how do we leverage AI? Like, and I think you need an engineering mindset to be able to go in and leverage AI to do that, because there's the other side of it as well, and I've seen this in a number of places, is that like you can give AI to everyone in the business and people start vibe coding and all that stuff. But then you have a whole set of problems related to governance, this whole set of problems related to, okay, so how do we build and deploy this? If it goes from an individual use case to a team, like, so if your sales team all of a sudden have this vibe coded tool that they're all using, that, like, what happens when it goes down? What happens?
Yeah.
You have to have that same level of operational excellence, if you want to call it that, around these vibe coded internal tools. Then you have to think about security, and then you have to think about like the potentially destructive actions, and so there's that side of it as well. So there's a whole host of new opportunities emerging in the AI space as a result of the change. Like, so there's opportunities because,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then there's the associated challenges as well that we have to manage. So I'm thinking about all that stuff at the moment, and how we manage that. And then there's the costs as well, and that's another interesting challenge, balancing the costs with the returns on investment. But that requires management internally as well.
Yeah. So how has the conversations changed, like with upper management, like, given pre-AI to like AI era?
Yeah, everyone's like, honestly, there was definitely a period there where everyone was just like super hyped. It was just like, what are we doing with AI? Why weren't we doing? We're so behind in AI. Everyone was saying. It's like, oh, and again, I think a bit of it was like you have certain companies, very well known companies, that are out there kind of just like marketing that they're like taking over the world with AI. They're,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So the pressure just built, and so every executive was saying like, where's our AI strategy? What features are we releasing with AI? What, how are developers using AI? They should, like, oh, I've seen that they can do 10x more in half the time, and all this kind of stuff, and I think things are settling a bit, and people are realizing, as I said, there was a lot of money spent, and now people are kind of going, hold on, what do we get from that?
Yeah.
And again, we have to remember as well, this is so new and there's so much to learn, that maybe we're going through a period of just, this is a learning period. I've no doubt at all that AI is going to be transformational in the impact it's going to have, but we have to figure out how we use it at so many different layers, whether it's as individuals, as teams, as organizations, and there's a whole lot to learn there. And people are spending a lot of money on learning at the moment, and I think the conversation has changed from, oh, this is a complete game changer, we need to go all in on this, and to, oh, hold on, maybe it's a little bit more nuanced, and maybe we need to actually find a problem first to solve and then use AI to solve the problem, rather than, like, I saw a lot of that. It's like AI is the solution, what is the problem stuff. Whereas now I think people are getting a bit more reasoned, and they're kind of going, okay, so what's the problem? What's the size of the problem and the opportunity associated? Okay, can we use AI to solve the problem? Okay, yeah. And what kind of cost is this going to be to solve the problem using AI? All right, that makes sense.
There was an interesting Jerry something. I'm terrible with names, but from Goldman Sachs last year, and he said there's been so much money spent on AI that we still haven't found a big enough problem to justify the amount to spend on AI. Right? He said that like coding is just like a fraction of the problem, and it's not even a problem. He said like something. We need to find a big, like almost like a holistic cure for cancer across the
Yeah,
world to even justify the billions.
that will come though. I think that will come.
Yeah.
I think I look at AI like electricity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, in early days electricity, you're looking at kind of going, there's such small use cases for it, and you're kind of going, what? And then transmission network, investing in that, you're like, really? Does this make sense? We have candles. This is fine.
Yeah.
But like now, like it's made like such a huge impact on the world when you think about the impact of electricity in various ways, shapes, and forms over the years. I think AI is the same. I think early days, it's hugely costly, and we could talk about sustainability and the impact and all that kind of stuff too. But it's hugely costly. But the cool thing about AI is AI can help AI get better. And that was the key strategic point. I think that the why coding became the first thing that we started using AI for, is because if we can use AI to get better at coding, guess what? AI, we use coding to build AI systems. So
Yeah.
so it's a flywheel effect. But But
What's
yeah,
your take on, like you mentioned electricity, right? And like when electricity was first kind of, I guess, the first modern version of electricity, it was actually private companies, right? And then it became a government utility, right? Do you think there's a similar type of story here where like it doesn't it moves from private companies holding the power to actually governments
I
because
hope so.
yeah,
I
and
hope
that spend
I hope so in a way, right? I hope so in a way, or semi-states at least.
yeah
Because I'm not sure how comfortable I am with like a couple of countries, um, you know, dominating in the AI space, whether it's China and the US.
mhm,
I would be, and you talk there about curing cancer and stuff. Like I want to see AI used for good, right? And
yeah
the right reasons and the right ways, not just purely for profitability, And um, so yeah, I'd love, I'd love for AI to be come into a space where it's used for the important problems, not just because it makes somebody a lot of money, but because it has such a positive impact on the world, whether it is education related, whether it's health related, whether it's to do with poverty, like it's one of those things that can have such a universally positive impact. A bit, as I said, like electricity.
yeah
That I want to see it. I don't want to see it owned by a small set of super wealthy, powerful people. I want to see that power um, made available to everyone, so that we can all benefit from it.
yeah yeah. Amen to that. We've covered a lot, man. Like we've went from early days at startups to scale ups to how AI is impacting budget, even reckoning into it maybe becoming a government utility. I always kind of finish with this question, and I've asked everybody so far, is like, what's the missing signal, right? So we are kind of like in this echo chamber, be it like LinkedIn, be it YouTube, be it X. Like, what is the signal that you think that people are missing that you know
The big aha moment I had probably 6 or 12 months ago, when I started working with teams to build out all these productized AI solutions, was related to evals, actually. And I know we spoke a little bit about
yeah
this. Was like, it's never been easier to create more shit, right? AI can generate more and more shit at a rate like never before. So the constraint or the problem is not our ability to generate more stuff, right? Whether that's output, or whether it's code or whatever. The constraint is the ability, is the quality of the stuff we produce.
mhm,
And therefore, like, I don't hear enough people talking about evals, right? I don't hear enough people talking about how we ensure the quality of the output of our AI is adequate. And that applies both to the output of products that we build, but also the internal tooling and how we evolve the artifacts associated with our AI systems, whether it's to do with skills, whether it's to do with all that kind of good stuff. Is like, how do we evolve those assets, those AI assets, in a way that we make sure that the quality of the output of those assets is at least maintained, if not getting better, as I said, both internally and in our products. So like, I build things that create. When I used to work in the fitness world, we did an AI workout builder. The biggest problem or constraint was not creating workouts. It created workouts great. It was the quality of the workouts it created. Okay, and understanding and building the systems and the tool sets to allow teams to evaluate the quality of the output and evolve their systems to get the quality to the right levels. That isn't being talked about nearly enough for my liking. People are just talking about creating output without understanding what the quality output is.
yeah it's hard to do, but when you do it right, it can have a dramatic impact. And we you touched on it earlier, as like building the right thing. And I think a lot of people just go with the least path of resistance, and evals are introducing resistance, but if you get it right, it can have a dramatic effect to your
It is, but like, it comes back to the testing and the quality stuff,
yeah
right? If like, if you don't care about the quality of the stuff you produce, then you guess what, you can produce stuff very quickly.
yeah
but ultimately, if we want this to be sustainable, and we want to be sustainably successful, the output we create has to be good, and it has to deliver value. So if we're creating workouts and nobody actually uses the workouts, or the workouts are crap, that personal trainer loses a customer.
Yeah.
Right, and that has an impact. Right, that has a serious financial impact. So ultimately, in the longer term, we have to have products that, like, AI is just a means to an end. AI has to deliver results for our customers. Coming back to Kaji Sierra, we make our customers more successful than you make your customers, right? So the more successful we make our customers in our context, the more valuable our product is, the more revenue we'll generate, right?
Yeah.
And now AI is just a means to an end there. It's like, how can we leverage AI to make our customers more successful in their context?
Yeah.
Right.
Love it. Rob, thanks very much. I'm sure a lot of people listening will find a lot of great nuggets of wisdom there that they can pull into their everyday. So really enjoyed having this conversation, and thanks for coming on.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.